Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you. Good to see you again. Hope and pray you're doing all well. And hopefully we'll be seeing you soonish, but let's see how things go in the coming weeks. We are now going into a series on Elisha. We've just finished off Elijah, one of the great prophets, and now his successor, Elisha, came after him, performing many miracles and doing many wonderful things. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be learning about this great man of God. Now, this week, we're going to be looking at Elisha's miracles. Some of the many miracles he carried out, just to show how he was a man sent from God, and God's authority and God's power was working through him. Then next week, we're going to go into Elisha and the widow, a poor widow that Elisha helped out. Then we're going to look at Elisha and the Shunammite, a woman that he assisted and also performed a great miracle with her and her son. And then we're going to go on to Elisha and the leper, when Naaman, a general, comes to him with leprosy, and let's see what Elisha does with him. And then we move on to Elisha and the Arameans, when a great army is surrounding a city, and they realize, though, that the people of God inside, well, because Elisha is with him, they had a great help and great assistance from God. Then we move on to Elisha and the famine, and once again another war happening, and the people being protected through the hands of God. So Elisha was involved in really protecting and delivering the people in many, many different ways through his life, and really a wonderful person to look up to. So the big idea for today is to understand that Elisha's many miracles proved that he was the man God had chosen to help his people. Rejecting him had serious consequences. So Elisha was chosen by God, sent by God, and he should be accepted because he spoke from God. So we mustn't reject him, and when you reject him, you get in trouble. So aim of today's lesson is to teach that God graciously helps those who trust the rescuer he has chosen and judges those who reject him. Now, this should also start sounding familiar. Now, who was another man who did great miracles, who spoke from God, who served the people and protected the people, and was rescuing the people? Jesus. So this is really a foreshadowing of the great, ultimate, perfect rescuer who would come later on. Now, we're going to be looking at 5 miracles today, and these are 5 of many that Elisha did. Firstly, was the healing of the water. Then there's the boys and the bears, the cleansing of the stew, feeding of the 100, and then the floating axe head. And these are all just to stamp Elisha's authority, to show that really he was from God, but also at the same time he was caring for many people. So let's get into some of these miracles. Now, Elisha had just taken over from Elijah, and he was at a town called Jericho. And it's really on a very dry place there, right near the Dead Sea, very desert-like. And there was a spring there, a water source, but it wasn't particularly clean, it wasn't good. It was a bit of a problem for drinking and for irrigation, for the agriculture. So the prophets, the people who were there, they came to Elisha and said, please would you heal this water, please would you make it better? And Elisha says, okay. So what he did, he said, bring me some salt, please. He took a small amount of salt, he threw it into the spring, and sure enough, cleansed the water. Because actually a curse had been put over that land by Joshua, or that town, city, many years before. And now Elisha actually cleared it and made it a place now where people could live once again more easily, because now the water supply had been restored. So a wonderful miracle. I mean, it wasn't the salt, it was God that really cleansed the water and brought it about. And then after that, he was heading up to a place called Bethel. Now, that was the sort of center of idol worship. So there was a lot of bad stuff, a lot of dodgy idol worship and false god worship going on there. And some kids coming out and they, ha, 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 ha. They start laughing away at Elisha and making life difficult for him. Now, there were probably at least about 50 of these young boys, young men. So they're laughing, maybe they were throwing things. He might have even been a little bit in danger by, this big group of men. And they were really mocking him, and they probably knew he was a prophet of the Lord, and they were serving these false gods. So, ha, 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 Elisha, baldy man. They were calling him names like bald head and things. And so Elisha prays for God to protect him, and God sends 2 big bears, and they chase the boys away. And he is protected, and many of the boys are hurt. Now, moving along. There is a famine in the land, and so the people who are serving God, there's not a lot of them, but there's this group, the sons of the prophets. They're struggling a bit for food. They go out, they're collecting food, and they make a big stew. But one of them collects some plants that were somewhat poisonous, doesn't realize it, puts it in the stew. They make the stew and they start serving this. They go, oh no, when they taste it, there's death in this pot. There's something poisonous in this pot. Now, this isn't a famine. They don't have much food. There's a lot of trouble, and they're really hungry. So Elisha says, don't worry. Bring me some flour, puts the flour into the pot, cleanses it all, and they can eat it, and then he provides food for the sons of the prophets there. So once again, it's not the flour that cleansed everything. It was God's power, and it was just a visible sign of him cleansing away and taking away the poison from this pot of food. And then the feeding of the 100. Once again, there's still famine, there's still shortage of food, and someone comes along. He must be quite a godly man. It's what's called his first fruits. It's the first food he's produced from his harvest. And he brings along, as an offering, he brings along 20 loaves of bread to Elisha. He says, here you go, this is the best and the first of my harvest. And there's about 100 people there, 100 men. And Elisha says, okay, take the food and serve the people to his servant. And the servant goes, Elisha, there's 20 loaves of bread and there's 100 people. We haven't got enough food. This is going to be a problem. Elisha, what do we do? Elisha says, feed them. There will be more than enough. And sure enough, they start feeding him, and the food just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming and coming, and they have more than enough. They all eat capacity, and there's still some left over. This should bring to mind Jesus and the feeding of the 5,000. Small amount of food goes a long way. So, moving along. Then finally, the last miracle we're going to discuss today. Now, some of the sons of the prophets, they wanted to then expand a bit. They were maybe running out of the space, so they're going to go build an extra structure. So they go down to the Jordan River. They said, Elisha, can you come with us? We're trying to now build an extra place to stay in for all the people here. Okay, I'll come. So Elisha goes down, and they're chopping down some trees to get some building materials. Now, one of the builders, he's chopping, and his axe head flies off and lands in the water. Splosh. Now, I don't know about you, but iron sinks. It's heavy. It'll drop down. The Jordan is a big, big river. It's probably now gone. And in those days, that was a very, very valuable thing. And the guy says, that was borrowed. So now he's going to be in huge trouble. Maybe he'll have to pay back a lot of money, but he's probably now lost out quite a bit because he's lost this borrowed precious axe head. And so Elisha says, don't worry, I've got this under control. Comes along, cuts off a stick, throws it in the water, and the axe head floats. Iron doesn't float, but this iron axe head now floats to the surface. The man can retrieve his axe head and go on. So a great miracle. Nothing fancy, nothing ground-shaking, just looking after a man who was in need and using God's power to look after the people who were serving him and just showing his power. So that takes us to the end of today's lesson, looking at Elisha, a real man of God who was serving him, did lots of miracles and lots of wonderful things. So I hope you've enjoyed that. We're going to now finish in prayer and then be done for today. So, Lord, thank you that you are a powerful, miracle-working God. God worked miracles through many, many of the men and women of the Bible. Then thank you for giving us what we need to serve you day by day. And then also help us trust in your power and not in our own strength. Help us trust you, Lord, that we trust in your strength, not our own. We can't do these things, but in all things you are powerful. And we know even in this difficult time in the world, God is still in control and we can still trust him. So, hope you've enjoyed today. It was good being with you. See you soon. God bless. Cheers.